This video will cover the Psychology GRE and study tips so that you can succeed on that test. Studying strengthens long-term memory, which is the system used for permanently storing, managing, and retrieving information for later use. Various memory performance experiments conducted by Cornell and Bjork show that spacing learning events apart and reviewing regularly increases the probability of information being recalled versus cramming information and studying something intensely, often for the first time, in the days or hours before a test. We may provide a boost to students' test scores and grades by creating short-lived memories without creating the type of lasting memories, which are the ultimate goal of education. Putting in the extra work to learn material for the long haul is particularly important for graduate students because by the time you reach graduate school, you're not just trying to pass a test. You're learning things you'll need to have a handle on for the rest of your working life. I'm going to talk about studying with different learning styles. There are four main types of learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading and writing. Visual learning is a style in which a learner utilizes graphs, charts, maps, and diagrams. One study tip for visual learners is to look for alternative sources of visual material when you study, like videos, PowerPoints, graphs, maps, and media programs. Auditory learning is a learning style in which a person learns through listening. So auditory learners could use study tips like listening to lectures or texts while driving, creating musical jingles or mnemonics to aid memorization, and explain ideas to other people. A kinesthetic learning style requires that you manipulate or touch something to learn. So those types of learners could use something like flashcards or do something while they study. And finally, reading and writing learners are pretty much exactly what they sound like. To help those learners, they could rewrite notes while studying or turn diagrams and charts into words.
Okay, now we talked about some different learning styles. I would like to give you some different tips on how to study in general. The first one is to space your study sessions. It is better to have 4 sessions of 15 minutes than 1 session of an hour. Because when you have 4 small sessions, the information will be stored better in your long-term memory than one long one. The second tip I have is to keep testing yourself. Even though a lot of students don't like being tested and a lot of professors don't like giving tests, it is very important to test yourself because this way you will retain information way longer, research says. Another tip I would like to give you is to use your waiting time. As students we wait quite a lot, for the bus for example, or before class starts. If this takes 15 minutes for instance, you can use this time to study. This way you will have a lot of smaller sessions, which we just talked about, and this will help improve your grade. Another more unconventional tip might be to use chewing gum. A study at St. Lawrence University showed that when you use chewing gum, when you do a test, you will have a slight improvement in score. So you will remember 2 to 3 words more than the average test taker. The last general study tip I would like to give you is to be aware of the best time of your day. Some students study better in the evening and some study better in the afternoon. For most students, they study better in the early day, so it's important to be aware of that. If that is not the case, try to find out if studying later in the day works better for you.
Another study tip is to try reviewing some of your studying material a few minutes right before bed. Research shows that during sleep, the brain strengthens new memories. So there's a good chance that you'll remember what you review right before dozing off. Sometimes getting yourself to start studying can be difficult. A way of motivating yourself to start studying can be using the reward system. For example, treating yourself to a sweet treat like a cookie, a walk around the block, or 5 minutes on your phone between breaks, whatever works for you, can get you through all of your studying material. Knowing there's a little reward waiting for you at the end of just a few pages makes it easier to beat procrastination while slogging through a semester's worth of notes. A way to relieve some stress and anxiety before a test or while studying is you can try meditating. Just before staring at a piece of paper for 3 hours, stare at a wall for 3 minutes. Research suggests meditation can reduce anxiety and boost attention span. While those studies focus mostly on regular meditation, there's no harm in trying it out for a few minutes to calm pre-test jitters.
Now that we talked about studying in general, I'm going to focus specifically on what is the Psych GRE. The Psychology Graduate Records Exam is a standardized test which is often used as part of the admission process for graduate school. Not all schools require the GRE to be taken. However, it is a good idea to take the test if you are planning on applying to a psychology graduate program. The basic structure of the exam is that it contains between 200 and 215 multiple choice questions, which you will have 2 hours and 50 minutes to complete. The test covers 3 broad categories. Roughly 40% is experimental and natural science material. About 43% is social science material, and the remaining 17% is general psychology material. Most of the questions are taken from core knowledge commonly taught at the undergraduate level. However, it is highly recommended to give yourself plenty of time to study outside of your class to have a competitive score for the psychology GRE. Before studying, it is recommended to take a practice test so you get a general idea where your strengths and weaknesses lie. Then begin studying through a prep study booklet from a publisher such as Kaplan or Princeton Review. It is also a good idea to study 1 or 2 introductory psychology books. Continue taking practice tests along the way to get a better idea of where you need to focus for the remainder of your GRE prep.
So we already covered a lot of the important things to do when studying for the GRE, but I'm going to go over what not to do. And the first point to really keep in mind is not to listen to music when you're studying. And I know that a lot of us like to listen to music when we're studying or doing homework, but when it comes to the GRE, it's really important not to, because studies show that we tend to remember content better when we're in the same kind of environment that we originally practiced the material in. So if you're taking a test in a quiet, professional lecture hall, then it's wiser to study the content in a very similar environment. The second thing to keep in mind when studying for the GRE is to know yourself and how you study better. For example, a lot of people like to study with study groups, but if you know that socializing with other people can distract you, it may be better just to study alone. The third thing to keep in mind when studying for the GRE is definitely to take the GRE practice course if you can afford it, because no matter how well you did in college, no matter how great your grades were, it doesn't really reflect your critical thinking, and that's exactly what the GRE is looking for, critical thinking. So don't overestimate yourself, and if you can afford it, try and take the GRE practice course. The fourth thing to keep in mind for not to do during the GRE is don't bring any study materials to look at during any of the breaks during the test. So if you have flashcards or something that you're keeping in your pocket, you don't want to do that, because if the testers catch even a hint of misconduct during the test, they can disqualify you. The fifth point to keep in mind is very important. It's almost a no-brainer, but I must cover it. And that is, don't leave your cell phone on during the test. It's best to power it off completely, or just don't bring it in at all. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you do really well on your next test.